Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Firefighters podcast, where we seek to develop, inspire, and motivate the world of the emergency services operator through a series of wide-ranging conversations. Now, before we go any further, just hit that rate, follow, or subscribe button on whatever platform you're listening to. It's a key performance indicator for us and helps us reach even more people. Now, here's what we've got for you today. Ask yourself, are we genuinely developing firefighters? And I'm talking thinking firefighters, or are we simply producing people who can perform a collection of tasks when they're told to? Because there is a huge difference between a firefighter who can do the job and one who can think, adapt, take ownership, and act when the answer is not written nearby or neatly inside a policy or a procedure, or someone's just going to point at you and tell you what to do. My guest today is Chief Jason Caughey, a friend of mine who I've spent some time over in Australia with the IFIW this year, and he works for Laramie County Fire Authority in Wyoming. Jason's got more than 30 years of experience in emergency services and has spent much of his career challenging the fire service, the fire department, to create thinking firefighters, rather than just passive ones who simply wait for instruction. The big thing I wanted to explain, and the big thing we get in to exploring in our conversation today, is this concept of high agency, the willingness to take responsibility, to solve problems, to challenge ideas appropriately, and own the outcome. We explore why fire departments are often far better at teaching tasks rather than developing people, how measurable performance standards can create confidence rather than fear, and why leaders must allow people to make mistakes without allowing standards to disappear. Jason also does a really, really great job of explaining how his organization recruits for people who are humble, hungry, and smart. We're going to talk about why coaching is usually more powerful than discipline, and how rank, uniform, and tradition can, not always, but certainly can, quietly become substitutes for genuine leadership. We're also going to examine what Jason calls the dangerous years between 2 and 8 in a firefighter's career, when development can stall, curiosity can disappear, and previously motivated people can slowly become complacent or even apathetic. This is a conversation about creating firefighters and leaders who are confident enough to act, humble enough to listen, and trusted enough to think. This is my conversation with Chief Jason Caughey. I'll see you on the other side. When we spent time together out in IFIW, surrounded by some incredible people, I mean, like Ed, to name just one of people that have just done so many incredible things, and instructors from around the world. And I kept coming back to the question of, are we really developing people, or are we just talking about producing techniques and, technicians and tactics and stuff like that? Because there's a huge difference. And I think sort of agency that we discussed over messages, whether it's be ownership, get shit done muscle, however we want to describe it, is something that I feel like we're hemorrhaging. I don't know if it's a generational thing. I don't know if we're developing timid leaders, timid firefighters, but it seemed to be something, to blow smoke up your ass, that you seem to have in spades. And I wanted to maybe try and draw some of that out and bottle it up to maybe get behind what it takes to be a person that has high agency, that's really taking action, that's not just walking around giving verbal high fives and writing nice quotes on walls. I don't know where do you think that came from in you, and how have you managed to develop it in other people? And do we even have a problem?
Yeah, well, I agree with you. I think we do have a problem. I think it's easy for organizations. The easy thing for organizations to do is focus on task level stuff, right? So pulling hose, flowing water, doing stuff. The hard thing is the people thing. Our greatest challenge is wear shoes. It's not money. It's not which engine we're going to use or what helmet we wear or any of those things. It literally comes down to people, and the fire service is built on people. We lead people who serve people, which is our community. And we do a marginal job at best at doing that. And we try to lead people through policy and procedure. We try to lead people through rules and regulations. And we need some of that, obviously. But what we really need to do is learn how to empower people, keep them within the parameters of our organization. But we need to empowerment, and we need to provide them ownership in their success, but also the organizational success. And for me, that came from the private sector. I worked in private business for a number of years, and working in private business, obviously, it's about revenue and it's about profitability. And the company that I worked for really prided itself on providing their staff the opportunity to fail within reason. They didn't want you to fail where you would lose millions of dollars, but they
Mhm.
wanted you to take some risk to provide a new revenue stream for their organization and in their company. So that was important. And then the second thing is just my upbringing. My mom and dad challenged me every day to be better than I was the day before. I had the fortune of playing some athletics across multiple levels, and my dad taught me that if you're gonna be if you're taking the day off, somebody else isn't, and they're gonna be better than you tomorrow. You might be good as a 13-year-old young lad in the sport. By the time you get to 16, those people that you're womping on are gonna be better than you unless you work harder than them. And so that was instilled in me, right or wrong. It drives me to be better than we were yesterday. It drives our organization to be better than we were yesterday. And it's easy to just rest on your laurels and do what everybody else does, but you can't. You can't. So
But how did you, because this is kind of a survivor biased story. And what I'm saying there is it worked for you. And I felt like it worked for me. My
mhm,
dad was pushed me all of the goddamn time. He was always up earlier than me. When he'd come back in, and I'd already be sat down, like mum would make tea for me and my sister, and we'd be sat having tea whilst he'd be pulling onto the driveway with the lads. He was a builder. Um,
mhm,
and he'd come and he'd open the front door and he wouldn't say anything to my sister or even my mum, but he'd look at me and he'd go, "Oh, time for tea, is it? I guess I'll empty the van on my own." And
yeah,
I
yeah,
took that dose appropriately because people say like the poison's in the dose. I took it appropriately and I'd get straight up and I'd get out there and he'd tell me about what he'd been up with today. And then he'd usually end up
mhm,
giving me something out of the van. He'd find it's something he took
right,
from, not like stolen from the job, but a bit of leftover
right,
something, or he'd have a Mars bar that he didn't have from lunch or whatever. Do you know what I mean?
mhm,
So there was kind of a
yeah,
reward metric in it as well. And then he might say like, "Oh, we've got to go out and price up a job later on. Do you want to come? We'll get a bag of chips on the way back or whatever." So that is the dose that was appropriate for me, and that kind of instilled a work ethic. Because I'd also get up at like about 5:30 in the morning and sit because he would leave early. So if I wanted to see him, I'd sit on the sofa whilst he was having his breakfast. And we'd just watch the news together, and then he'd leave, and I'd just dick about for an hour before I went to school or whatever. But that that is two people, two maybe type A people in an echo chamber where they survived that dose. That dose could crush some people, and that they could tell exactly the same story of how they had an overbearing parent.
mhm,
So,
yeah,
and we give a lot of credence to that. We give a lot of weight to not, putting too much pressure on people and how pressure can crush people and all this sort of stuff. And I think we've kind of like killed the mechanisms of how we create people that have that sort of risk aversion. Because I love what you said about external companies as well. Like they actually have to get a result. You know what I mean?
yeah,
I've run a number of businesses and I worked for a company called Mars, which is massive in the States, whereas in the UK
yeah,
as well, they make cat and dog food and Mars bars and all this sort of stuff.
sure,
And we would send us for development at different factories all around Europe because that's how we develop, and we'd need to actually make an efficiency gain. We need to reduce waste, increased output, whatever, whatever. Fire department doesn't make anything. So how do we
mhm,
measure success in the same way? Do you know what I mean? No one's paying the bill. So it's kind
yeah.
of harder. Do you know what I mean?
It is, and I think that you hit it. We don't have a scorecard. Our
Mhm.
scorecard, if you travel the world and ask fire departments, one of the most common questions that if you're trying to learn about a fire department or an organization, you ask them, "Well, how many calls do you run a year?" That's our scorecard. Well, that has nothing to do with performance. That just is pure
Right.
volume, and so we don't have a metrics that that provides us scoring. Now we can have out the door times, right? How fast we turn out and get out the door, how fast we get on scene. But after that, there really isn't a lot of data that we can base our performance on. So we had to create
No.
that. We do it in training by using stopwatches, and we have a minimum performance standard using a time because time doesn't lie. So we've established those times to be minimums, and we challenge our folks to be better than that. And there becomes that competition amongst each other to be better than that. But I think your real question is, not everybody can be the hard charger, visionary person seeking to be better every day. There are position players on any team, and you need good position players that are willing to go along, but you also need position players that are looking with their eyes open at the world saying, I can do this better. I can do this aspect or component of my job better, and they drive it. And so your question about have we softened society? I don't know if we've softened society, but I don't know if we're um, creating those hard chargers that are willing to get some road rash along the way and get up, brush
Mm.
themselves off, and keep on moving. And that's,
Mm.
as a leader, you have to be willing to be able to pick yourself back up and keep going even when everything's against you.
It is beyond a privilege to be able to bring the Firefighters podcast to you, and we are so grateful for every single person that supports, listens, shares, and follows our journey. And to help us keep doing it, create more, reach more guests internationally, and make the podcast sustainable, we're asking for you to help. And to do this, we've set up a Patreon page. By joining our Patreon community, you will get access to every single full episode archive we have ever made. Now, hundreds and hundreds of key documents that we've got in there on fire behavior, firefighter health, cancer risks, incident debriefs, and so much more. So if you feel like you want to join the Patreon crew and help us make this possible, head to patreon.com/TFFPC or check the link in any episode podcast notes.
That aspect of making mistakes, of scraping yourself down the tarmac, you spoke about it earlier. I was looking at some research this morning. I know Google spent a lot of time trying to look for what makes high performers. I think it was Project Aristotle or something like that. And they were like, it wasn't talent, it wasn't experience, it wasn't even IQ, it was something around psychological safety, that people can speak up, make mistakes, challenge ideas without being punished. And I don't know if it's because the fire service exists in the public sector and we're such an easy target for high scrutiny, that fear of scrutiny is whatever really stops us from, or what is a real limiter on making ourselves high performance teams. Because we used to, like we still, to be fair, put high performing sports teams on a pedestal, and we'll send each other books about, the best sports teams in the world and this does that. But sports science actually moved away from outcome metrics decades ago. Like rugby is an example. I played that when I was at school. They used to measure only on point score, but now they measure on technique, consistency, decision making, timings, similar to exactly what you're speaking about, high pressure responses. And they know that the outcome follows the discipline of the process, which is literally exactly what you're talking about with timing runs. Because we will talk about a technique in the UK, but we don't have fixed times on.
Right.
So you rock up at a structure fire. How long does it take to get, throw a ladder, get 2 breathing apparatus in rapid deployment at the door with a charge line ready to go inside, clock stops there. We don't even have that. We have standard setups for high rise, but even they aren't timed, even though downstream the physics, we know fire grows in direct correlation to time and air, effectively, and fuel source, time that it's given to grow. So it's almost as though we didn't take that final leap into holding people accountable to time metrics. How did that go down when you started doing it in your organization?
So we've been on that journey for 20 years, and we took that process and put it into this organization 16 years ago here. I'd been doing it prior to that, but 16 years ago. And when we started that, there was this fear that they weren't going to be able to perform, right? And so we had to do, it's a crawl, walk, run segment or series, right? So we had to build their confidence in the crawl part of it. Is, do they have the capacity, the knowledge to be able to perform the task first? And if they don't, we need to do some mental reps there so that they know what they're doing to do. If it's donning an SCBA or if it's throwing a ladder, then we had to walk them through it, which was practice, and then we had to run them through it under time. And what they found was the sets and reps that they were getting improved their mental confidence in it, and it also improved their physical aptitude of being able to do the task. Once they had success, we trained them for success. We didn't train them to fail. We didn't want them to fail in their early part of their lessons, because that was detrimental to their psyche. They would give up, especially when you dealt with volunteers or folks that maybe didn't have the ability to get up and brush themselves off and keep going.
Got to
So we
build
wanted them to
confidence. Yeah.
succeed. Yeah, build confidence, and by the time they're done with it, let's say, so we have a tactic called primary search, second story. So they have to throw a ladder, stretch a hose line as a crew, find a victim 2 rooms away, get that victim to the window, evacuate that victim out. They have 12 minutes to do that from the time the air brakes are set on the apparatus. So basically pulling up, right? And the
Nice.
first time you do it, it takes you 16 minutes. And the first time you do it, you might run out of air in your bottle. And the first time you do it, but you progress. And so by the time they're done, they're doing it in 9 minutes. They're crushing it. But it's a series of events that builds them into one, proficient firefighters that become confident in their skill set. And the nice thing is everybody's held to that standard. And so now, regardless of what crew you're with, and are confident in their ability to do it because you all did it the same. And if we didn't have a stopwatch on that timer, what's that performance look like? Well, Jimmy took 18 minutes to do it, but Jane took 9 minutes to do it. There's a performance difference there. And we wouldn't even have identified it had we not had stopwatches on it. So we think
But also there's a
it's an
DNR,
important way.
coming back to John
Yeah.
McDonough's The Spread, there's a do not
Yeah,
complete.
right.
Someone can't even complete the task. Like you say, they run out of air and they simply just don't
Yeah.
get the casualty to that point. And it blows my mind what's stopping it. I need to ask this question more in regular podcasts, I think, because I don't know why we don't adopt these timings in the UK. I have no idea why we don't do it.
And it's not adopted theoretically across the United States either, in North America. You're going to find pockets where that aren't there. In the NFPA standard, we always had a time for turnout gear. How fast can you put your turnout gear on? How fast can you put your SCBA on? That was 1 minute for each. The latest editions of NFPA standard have removed that time because there's so many variations on where you store your gear and where you put your SCBA. Is it in the cab? Is it out of the cab? I disagree with that. We continue to time those from day one. They're under a stopwatch and they're just used to it and accustomed to it by the time they're done.
So if I don't do it in your organization, I can't do it. I just can't do it. I'm crap. Like, can I not point to NFPA and go, well, hang on a minute, Jason, like nationally it says I don't need to do that. What's this little localism? Or is it, well, I'm choosing to work in your fire department and this is the standard we set? How do you navigate that? Because we're heavily unionized in the UK.
Yeah.
Heavily unionized.
And that's not
which
a bad
makes
thing.
things difficult. No, it's not a
Yeah, but
bad
that's
thing.
not a bad
It can be a hell of a barrier to progress at times, and it also can help progress in different ways.
So
But
by statute, we have the authority having jurisdiction. So our rules are recognized as that's what you have to meet. And if you don't like it, that's okay. Go find another organization. We want high performers in our system, whether they're volunteers or our paid staff. We want people that are committed to their profession and growing. More importantly, we want people that have hearts and compassion and care. And if you care about your performance, you'll also care about the citizens you serve and also your teammates. So there's a responsibility to be a part of an organization, and those are the standards we set for our organization.
So assuming people will still make mistakes and people still get things wrong. I know Amy Emerson was a researcher from Harvard. She did things around reporting errors in high-performing organizations, and one of the factors that they constantly seem to circle back to was this sort of intellectual humility at the top. The chief being able to say, "I got that wrong," gives other people permissions to be human further down. How do people do that without making it seem performative?
Well, first off, I think Amy, the researcher, hit it right on the head, is that as leaders, we have to be willing to admit our flaws, admit that we don't know everything. I have folks in our organization that are way smarter than me in many areas and components. My job is to get the best out of them. And I fail at that every day. Every day when I go to bed, I write a list in my head or on my phone of things that I should have done better today. Whether that was an interaction with a firefighter, whether that was a report that I wrote, whatever it was. So tomorrow I could be better at it. But I also admit my faults to our folks, and you have to be human with them, and they have to understand they'll give you grace when you're human with them, right? They expect you to perform. So if you fail continually on every level, they're going to lose confidence in you. But they also understand that you're human and you are going to screw up once in a while, right? And just owning that and moving forward, then that provides you the opportunity when they make mistakes as mid-level management or company officer, whatever that is, that you can give them grace and say, let's talk about how you got to that point where you made that decision. What were you thinking? And when we have those conversations, it's an education point for them to be able to grow from. Now, there's a couple things that we don't tolerate, right? Lying, you can't lie in our organization. If you lie, we've lost all credibility and trust with you. So own it. If you make a mistake, own it. And when you own it, let's talk about how we can make a different decision in the future. We do very little write-ups. I think writing people up is probably the weakest form of leadership you can do when somebody makes a mistake. The best form of leadership you can do is counseling and coaching. Let's talk about it. And then let's come up with a plan of how we're not going to do that again and come to a better decision, right? Example.
Is there a level at which they're
natural,
not possible to do that?
Yeah, I think there is. I think write-up is 3 trips down the line. I think there's opportunities to have, if you've given them the good base skills to be in that leadership position, then you should have a relationship to be able to have conversations that are productive without getting to the write-up or the discipline portion of it. But if you see a trend where they continue to make the same mistake, they continue to make those same bad decisions, then you're left with no choice other than documenting, writing them up, time without pay, whatever those punishments are, but you're never going to recover that person after that. If you have to get to that level, you'd be better to send them on their way to someplace else because they're not going to fit into your system.
Psychologically, they've already left anyway. It's just a
and
long exit now. It's a really long exit ramp, isn't it?
Yeah, and I'd rather get rid of them faster, earlier in the system before they become leaders than end up having with a leader that I'm continually having to write up. I want to when I got here, Pete, in 2011, it was a very militaristic organization where you couldn't touch anything. If you were a line firefighter, you couldn't touch anything without the permission of your supervisor or superior. And I changed that, and that ruffled some feathers. I said, at the time we had about 50 people, and we're up to 120 now. I said, I want 50 people with the same common values and goals interacting. And I want you to be able to take the opportunity to solve or challenge our system when appropriate. Meaning, if you walk in our station and you notice the garbage is overflowing, I want 50 people recognizing that and changing it, emptying it. If you notice on the engine that X, Y, or Z is in the wrong place, I want 50 people noticing it and addressing it. I can't just have the company officers taking those actions. I needed everybody. And by setting that foundation, that set us on a trajectory that allowed us to create thinking firefighters, not only on the fire ground, but in everything we do. And that's what's allowed us to grow and expand.
Yeah, I think when you do the traditional or the sort of approach that was done prior to the changes that you made, it's very hard to re-engineer that or change that because effectively you've developed concrete. You've already created their mindset of how they show up at work. The fact that they now have a different color on their shoulder or something like that is largely irrelevant because then that timid leader follows that sort of same path all the way up the organization. Then they're constantly asking for approval from above. They will either consciously or unconsciously be suffocating ideas from the ground level, from the boots on the ground, from the tip of the sword. But it's really difficult to I think people find it difficult to give people that freedom because of fear of ramifications, lack of experience that they think that person has. I know one of the partners we used to work with had this thing around waterline decisions,
Mhm.
where they'd give an analogy of like everyone's in a boat and certain people in the boat can make waterline decisions, which is like, so Jason's the chief. Jason, anything that's going to sink the boat is a waterline
Mhm.
decision. But emptying the trash, where to put this, where to put that, what new, bloody PPE provider to go with or whatever, some stuff like that. It's not going to sink the organization. If you really fuck it up, it might be a long-term pain that will cost us some
Right.
money, but that's how we need to help you fail safely, especially in the micro. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because then you'll have that sort of top cover and you'll have that safety and security when it comes to making the big waterline decisions at your level. Because I imagine when you get promoted from number 2 to number 1, you don't pass through some mental curtain
Right.
that suddenly imbues you with all the confidence that you've not had if you've developed and grown in a system that doesn't encourage ownership and accountability at the ground level.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think that's a great analogy, and that's a great study. When you give them opportunities to make decisions that don't sink the boat, right?
Mhm.
Our parameters are, don't do something that's gonna get somebody hurt or killed, and don't do
Yeah,
something that's gonna end up putting you or somebody else in jail or in legal issues, right?
yeah,
So those are the 2 parameters. Everything else we can solve.
yeah.
If you put the garbage can in the wrong place, we can solve that. If
Okay.
you put the nozzle in the wrong place, we can solve that.
Yeah.
But we want them thinking, right? And you're exactly right. If you didn't grow up in a system like that, it becomes very unnatural for you. And in fact, for
Mhm.
a lot of people, it's too loose, too uncontrolled, unprescribed, that they just don't fit into that system because they need to know that if I do X, I can do Y, and then when I do
Yeah.
Y, I do Z, and there's no gray area. I like living in the gray area, and I like our members living in the gray area because that means they're thinking. They're not
Mm.
just following policy. And as you know, you can't write enough policies to lead people. It's you write one policy and
Yeah.
you break 3 others. So
Mm.
so I'd rather live in the gray with some guidelines and then
Mm.
provide our folks the opportunity to think through those challenges and develop as people.
Mm.
Everything we do is about people.
How do you recruit for people that don't lie and have the right values? This is it might be a crap
Right,
question, but people talk about values based recruitment here in the UK, and there's a couple of companies that
right.
do it for the fire service. And I kind of think, I mean, I'll be stepping all over what they actually do, so I apologize. But they do a few questionnaires, they do an interview online and stuff like this. Our recruitment windows are very, very short. So even once you get in and when you're going through training school, it might be 10 weeks, 12 weeks, something like that. There's a lot of operational elements that won't be covered. There's very
Mm,
few team-based activities, or those are seen as a privilege. When I've ran recruitment courses in the fire service that I've worked in before, I've found myself justifying sessions that I wanted to do that were values based because they may not have tangibly looked like there's like, so what piece of kit are they training on today? And I'm like, no,
mhm,
we're going to do this. And predominantly it's about decision making, challenging each other, accountability. There'll be a time cap on it and whatever. And you'd argue they're just old team building sessions. Private organizations
mhm,
I've found when I've worked in them seem to spend a lot more time and money doing this sort of stuff because they see the lag value of it. The lead value isn't, well, you could have spent an hour familiarizing them with the branch or the thermal imaging camera or
yeah,
whatever.
yeah,
And I'm like, yeah, but the lag metric of this is the team cohesion, the independence that person will develop, their ability to challenge things before they get dangerous. How do you guys and girls kind of square that circle around how long is recruitment? What does it kind of involve? And how do you know if you're selecting for people that have a similar value?
yeah. So probably still improving and need improvement on it, but, about
Okay.
10 years ago, we
It's honest.
noticed that we would bring folks on, and 6 months later, they weren't who we thought they were, right? And so we really took a hard dive back into what is our system? And so we read a book, and we used a book as a case study through our officers called Honoring Tradition, called Ideal Team Player by Lencioni. And through that book, they talk about a construction company that has great performers, and the owner of the construction company is going to be selling it, and they're trying to figure out how they're going to continue. And they do an assessment of, excuse me, each one of their leaders, and they're like, Jane's awesome, but nobody wants to work with her. She gets her projects done on time. She's financially, she's on budget, but nobody wants to work with her. And then you got Jimmy, who isn't never on time, but everybody wants to work with. And so they focused on 3 traits: humble, hungry, and everyday street smart. And we took that and we built it into our system and into our scoring metrics for our interview questions. We rewrote every interview question and got rid of the traditional, tell me what integrity means, tell me what, service means, tell me what aggressive means. We got rid of those, and we say, demonstrate to us where you were in a position where you had to test your integrity. And so by rewriting them, they now have to define through their actions, not their words, what those mean or what it meant. And then we scored them on, are they hungry? Do they want to be successful? Are they willing to put the work in to be successful? And have they demonstrated that at any point in their life prior to us? Are they humble, or are they just in it for the t-shirt and the bravado? And then are they everyday street smart, which isn't education necessarily, but do they have the ability to read the room, make the appropriate decisions? And we want that through demonstrated ability prior to joining us.
I have been wearing Gore-Tex for nearly 2 decades on the front line, working in hostile environments, tackling challenging incidents from firefighting to water incidents and in urban search and rescue environments. Gore-Tex have a well-earned reputation for protecting professionals in the fire and emergency services through their family of highly innovative, waterproof, breathable moisture barriers that exceeds global performance standards and are trusted worldwide. Gore-Tex, going further together.
And then we're continually assessing that throughout their. We do a 10-week, very, very basic academy, but they start in teamwork on day 1. They're assigned a crew of 3 people. They're with that crew for the entire 10 weeks. So they have accountability to each other. You can't fool the players, right? So they can't fool each other. If they're not pulling their weight, that team's going to know it right now. And through that process, we weed out 10% of those academy students just because, one, they're not who they say they are, and they're not willing to put the work in, and we identify it through that teamwork capability. So that's the process. When we did that, we noticed that our recruitment and our retention improved. 1, we were getting better recruits. 2, our retention of them was exponentially better. We weren't flipping them over, 16 months in or 3 years in. They're staying us because of that, because the process is better. Now, we can improve it, and we need to. How we review and score, we're not teaching the panel how to do that well enough. We need to work on that area. And we need to learn from the failures that we've had with the hires where we're like, how did that guy get through our system or that gal get through our system? And let's figure that out. So
they give some dangerous combinations off the back of that. But I remember hearing his TED Talk first, because he's got a series of books.
Yeah, he does. Yep.
I think they're all
Ideal Team.
I think they're all.
Yeah,
they're all under the banner of I think the first one's like the 5 dysfunctions of a team or something like that.
Yep.
I've just been looking at it whilst we're talking now. But the ones that are the dangerous combinations might really help people unplug these. So, as an example, if there's someone's humble only, then they're like the really, really nice person, but they've really got any drive, there's no edge, and they can just get walked all over. You sometimes see that with family members, and they justify it with it's the right thing to do, looking after each other, blah, 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 blah. I think more commonly, because these people tend to stand out for wrong reasons, you can sometimes see the hungry one who's like the bulldozer. They get lots of stuff done, but they literally destroy people in the process. And they can actually be really toxic for a team culture.
Yep.
And then there's the one who's just smart, who's entertaining, but almost contributes absolutely nothing. The ones that I think are actually the most dangerous are the hungry and smart ones that have no humility. And with respect,
Yes.
sometimes you can find them getting to the top of organizations because they're like the skillful politician. They're highly, highly
Yep.
capable, but they are completely self-serving. So I love that you've
Yep.
adopted those 3 levels: humble, hungry, smart. Because I think in the original 5 levels one, they also, I think something we spoke about already. They bring in absence of trust. There's one around avoiding conflict or fear of conflict,
Yeah.
avoidance of accountability. But I think they have it in a pyramid one where it is it's still inattention to results, so it has to be accountability, because otherwise
Yeah.
individuals start to protect their own ego, their own reputation, or their career over the actual team mission outcome. But
Yeah.
yeah, you've really got to
Yeah.
watch out for those hungry, smart ones that don't have any
Y-
humility. How do you coach them? Because that's almost
You
like
don't.
the slightly psychopathic,
You,
sociopathic one but they're so
yep.
damn capable, Jason. Like they're
Yep. They
scary.
are, but they're not. They're not a good team. They're pardon the language, but they're a jackass. They don't
Yeah.
fit the culture, and culture's king in business. Culture's king in the fire service. If we don't have the right people believing and leading the culture, we're a mess. And you hit it. The combination of humble, hungry, everyday street smart. If they're lacking one of those and they're coachable, we'll take a chance. If they're
Mm,
lacking 2 of those, but they're not coachable, or they are coachable and they're lacking 2, we probably won't take them because the combination of both those sets, our personality traits, are critical. You hit it right on the head. The toughest ones are they're hungry, they're hard chargers, but they
mm,
have no humility.
no.
But they're street smart. And we see it in
Yeah, they
social
can
media every day,
navigate the
right?
political landscape. They know who to talk to. They know what projects
Yeah.
to get involved
Yeah.
with. And they
Yeah.
can almost
Yeah.
do performative empathy. They can fake it sometimes.
Yeah. Yep, yep, but
Super
they're not
scary.
good for your system. They're not good for your system. They're just
Yeah.
not good for your system. I would rather have the person that I have to hold back the reins on the hungry, right? So we have to control them,
Mm,
say, hey, you got to slow down a little bit. But they're so humble that they don't even recognize that they're hungry, right?
mm,
All they are is just wanting to be here and be a part of it and work hard. Uh, we used to, we live in an agricultural community, and
mm.
when I was hiring people, we would get people that are highly educated, engineers, chemists, scientists, whatever, and then there would be that ranch young man or young woman that grew up on a farm or on a ranch. I'd want that ranch person, one, because they knew work ethic, right? Their
Yeah.
parents were up at 5 a.m. to go milk the cows or what it was. They knew hardship, they knew how to work, and now they've accomplished something. They've achieved education, they've gotten to a level where they can compete for jobs. They'll win out for me all the time because their heart, their passion, their
Mm.
work ethic, their humility, all of those pieces. So um, you start
It's
to
one of the
learn
only
those
reasons
traits.
I got my daughter a horse when she was younger, because I wasn't on board with
Yeah.
it to start with. I didn't want her to be a little
Yeah.
princess, like acting like a rich kid just because she's got a bloody horse, because many people don't have horses.
Yep.
But when I
Uh-huh.
knew she would have to, when we started spending time with other people that had them, and you had to be
Yeah.
there,
Yeah.
quarter to 6 in the morning, sorry, to muck out the
Yeah.
horses, let them out, bring them in
Yep.
the evening. And I was like, oh, this is great to learn when you're 10, because then when you're
Yes.
all 17, 18, and someone
Yeah.
says we need to do this really difficult task, or, it's a 6 a.m. start in the morning, you won't even bat an eyelid. You'll just be
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, I mean that's like normal. When your friends are like, oh my god, it's such an early start and we've got to fucking walk through these
Right.
fields and shit, she'll just be like,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, I mean that's,
Yeah.
she'll
Been
have
there,
that
done that.
conditioning.
Yep.
Yeah. So that was the bit. Shoveling horse poo every morning, I think, is really good for your character at a young age if you can do it. And I
No, there
appreciate they were
there
always expensive. It's like a big expensive dog, you know.
there's also a thing about horses, right? Which is fun. I have 3 of them. My wife's in the process of buying 2 more.
Jesus.
You have to be confident enough around a horse to show
Yeah.
that you're strong enough to be against them even though you're physically not, but you have to be soft enough not to scare them because 'cause they're a prey animal, right? And so there's a bunch of human nature pieces that you can
Mm.
learn by interacting there that can develop into leadership. And I watch my wife. My wife's 5'1" and 100 and nothing pounds, right? And she's with this 1,500-pound animal that could destroy her in a second. She's got to be confident enough, not show fear, but not so aggressive that the horse doesn't respond appropriately either. So
Mm.
there's a lot of life lessons there.
Horses
There's
find
leadership
out
lessons.
arseholes really fast. Like you can't. I saw
Yes.
there's so you do horse therapy in the UK, but there's also I've seen this sheepdog leadership
Yeah.
course.
Yeah.
We actually had the guy on a little while back
Yeah.
because he was like, you can see the leaders that come in and just try and shout at the dog, and then
Yep.
like he told a great story of that like senior leadership team, and the CEO or whatever had his go third. And about a
Yeah.
few, he didn't lose his shit with the dog at all, but he just got more and
Yeah.
more assertive, and he was
Uh-huh.
overusing the whistle, and he started to confuse the dog, and the dog just completely leapt the wall and ran back to the house and sat in its
Right.
cage. And then it was just so, and when they did the debrief session afterwards around the table, and they talk about sunshine and shadows, if you've ever done that before, where like I'll say,
No. No.
yeah, so sunshine and shadows is so you'll sit in the middle, it's your turn. We'll all sit around you and I'll go, so Jason, you're such a confident speaker, like you're super articulate and you seem to have so much confidence in the things that you say. You're so assertive with them, which I think is great for our organization. That's the sunshine. The shadow is when you then ask for my opinion in something, I know you're so passionate about it that you want to test my opinion to know if I even believe it, or because obviously it needs to withstand a bit of pushback in the room before we release it to the organization. Because I know you're so strong in that, honestly, like I just get bamboozled and I start to trip over my words, and then I feel like I don't know what I'm right, even if I've really prepared for this. And that is the shadow that your light casts. Now, some of that is a you
Mm-hmm.
problem, as in a me
Yep.
problem. Like, well, Pete, maybe you need to develop a little bit more, but it is feedback nonetheless. So
Yeah.
you can't just go like, well, Pete, you just need to believe in your ideas more. Do you know what I mean? Maybe you're not for leadership because clearly you don't have that kind of conviction. Do you know what I'm saying? Because that's what
Yeah.
we really need. Now, okay, but you've clearly put me in this position because you think I have some attributes that are useful for the organization. I want to acknowledge and celebrate your strength, Jason, but I also want to balance that so that it doesn't feel so prickly to me and
Mm-hmm.
or I don't know that I don't know how the team feel about that. But you know what I mean? So we do the sunshine and shadows. Like sometimes people are so academic that again it can intimidate other people from presenting any information because someone will be like,
Yep.
oh, did you get that from FSRI or NFPA, or because I read
Right.
their latest
Right.
release yesterday and I didn't see it, was this on
Right.
page 56? And you're like, fucking Jace, look, I just fucking read it, mate.
Right.
I don't know what the fuck,
Yeah.
maybe it's bullshit, and then we kind of write it
Right.
off. But those kind of, but again, they're all a privilege thing. You know, the sheepdog one, and buying a horse and taking your team to see a horse. Whilst they are so incredibly useful, I don't know how we put development like that into organizations to really get the leaders that we're trying to optimize for.
I think it goes back to what we already talked about.
Okay.
You have to care about your people. You have to be able to be willing to make mistakes. You have to be willing to share those mistakes. I see it as I've grown in this organization that when I'm successful not having a negative shadow to our folks, I love the analogy. Um, they're more apt to want to share their concepts and ideas. The early years, I had to ask, "What do you think?" But they told me what I wanted to hear, right? And
Mhm.
really what I wanted was, "Tell me what you truly believe." And if we're way off base, let's talk about it. We're back to that point now
Okay.
where the guys will I'll say, "You don't have to do it this way. Tell me how you are gonna do it, though." And
Mm.
I'm gonna give you a pointer, about maybe some lookouts or some watchouts so that you don't fail miserably. But it's okay for you to make mistakes along that journey. But I need you to communicate it with me so that way we know we're on the same page together. We're not always going to agree, but I don't want
Mhm.
to deter you from thinking and creating. So, for
Mm.
example, yesterday we're rewriting our alarm protocols for dispatch right now, and
Mhm.
one of the zones actually has a responding apparatus from 16 miles away. And I said, does that make sense? In
That's a
my
long
head, I'm
ass
like,
way
that doesn't
away.
make sense.
It's
Right. But I
a hell of a
wanted them to
turnout
come
time.
to that recognition that maybe that doesn't make sense. And so I said, how can you solve that challenge? It doesn't make sense for us to have them driving 16 miles away when there's closer units to it. And by the time we walked out of the room together, they had come up with a new plan for that. Not my plan, but their plan. They owned it, right?
Yeah.
If we were in a more disciplined, formal, functional boss subordinate, they probably would just waited for me to give them the answer. But that doesn't
Mhm.
do our organization anything for just waiting for one person to give them an answer. When they came together as 3 officers in a room and came up with the solution, then that's powerful. That gives them ownership of the solution. It empowers them to think. It gives them trust with me as a boss to say he was open to hearing something different and
Mhm.
he gave us the opportunity to solve the problem. That's the shadows that we want, right?
Absolutely. I think those elements are what builds more long term sustainable development. Because, like you say, if it always requires you to approve or to lead on a solution, then you're never really going to create the thing will only work when you're there. And as soon as you're not in the room or you're not present or you retire, because you will retire at some point in time, it's like culture's what happens when no one else is there. They say about All
Yep.
Blacks, culture is what happens on the Tuesday morning. It's when they're
Right.
sweeping the sheds and no dickheads and, leaving the jersey better than you found it and all that sort
Yeah.
of stuff. I wanted to ask you about, I think a story that I'd looked at you'd told before. Was it around a helmet story you
Yeah.
told publicly?
Yeah.
The red helmet?
Uh, yeah, my red helmet,
Yeah.
about about thinking I needed to buy a fancy helmet. Is that the one?
Yeah. The helmet will make you a better
Yeah.
leader. Will that helmet
Yeah.
provide better services to Mrs. Smith? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Firefighters, police officers, and first responders are now stepping into environments wired with more high voltage than ever before. Everything from electric vehicles to solar panels feeding direct current through compromised structures, overhead power lines, and illicit drugs factories with improvised lethal bypasses. Any single strike in the wrong place in this type of environment can turn things fatal very quickly, and that is exactly why we've partnered with Jafco. You already know Jafco are. They have been relied upon for decades for sturdy, get the job done equipment, and they are not resting on their laurels. They are evolving to face the challenges first responders are handling today through their insulated tool range. These are purpose built for the scenarios where contact with hidden electrical hazards isn't just possible, it is increasingly likely. Their insulated tools are engineered for real-world abuse and use, designed to keep firefighters, police officers, and all first responders alive in environments where electrification is outpacing policy, equipment, and training. And you know this. This is the kind of innovation our sector needs and the kind of investment organizations should be stepping up to support if we are serious about protecting first responders from fatal consequences. So a massive thank you to Jafco for backing the podcast and backing the crews on the ground. Go check them out, learn what they're doing, and bring that conversation into your service because this isn't about the future, it's about right now.
So I got promoted to a company officer as a captain, and during my promotion, they gave me a new red helmet, right? And of course, as a young, immature firefighter, I was pretty excited about that and truly honored to be appointed to that position. And the next day, I'm sitting there looking through back then there was no internet. You ordered from a catalog, and uh, and I'm looking at this, and my boss walks in and he goes, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm looking for a helmet to buy now that I'm a captain." And he goes, "Didn't they give you a helmet last night?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, what's wrong with that helmet?" And I said, "Nothing." And he goes, "Well, buying a different one, a cool one, isn't going to make you a better captain." And he just walked away. And I ended up shutting the
Ouch.
catalog and reflecting on that and saying, you know what, exactly right. And what 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 mattered wasn't about what I looked like or how cool it was. What mattered was how I was going to treat our people and grow our people as a company officer and take care of our people. we get lost because of the bravado of the fire service, more so in North America maybe than the rest of the world, but it's creeping into other parts of the world as we travel. Um,
Oh yeah.
yeah,
The pomp
more
for the
important than all
uniform
that.
and the white shirt and the paraphernalia and the fucking hell. It gets crazy. I
Yeah,
have a big thing against white shirts in the UK.
yeah.
Not against the people,
I don't wear a
but
white
against
shirt.
the
Yeah,
concept of a white shirt. It
yeah,
just screams blue collar, white collar, I'm better than you. I can only do intellectual work. That's literally the origins of blue collar,
yeah,
white collar jobs. It is,
yeah,
I will not do manual labor. It is beneath me. I am above that now. And we try and write it off. We go, oh no, it looks neater. It looks this. No, all it said, I think there's two reasons people want to protect them. One of them is I'm better than you, and I know it, and that's one
yep,
reason. Some people want to. Some people just want a clear divide. Um,
yep,
and I just think it would be cheaper. Well, I know it's cheaper
mhm,
to. I mean, if you want to extrapolate the figures, you go, well, people having less white shirts, ironing, washing, blah 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 blah. They look different from everybody else. It actually creates fear in some organizations if a
yep,
white shirt is on
yep,
station. Do you know what I mean? The
yep,
recruit worries about making a mistake. And I just, there's an irony to like the type of people that may be more likely to get into those positions. And bear in mind, I wore a white shirt for a period in my career only
mhm,
a couple of years ago. I had to. I thought about, I nearly got even a verbal warning for not wearing it, so I eventually had to wear it.
yeah,
So I think the people that are more likely to get there are then the people that wanted the divide. Not all of them, genuinely not all of them. Like a high percentage of them are just lovely people, and now they have to wear a white
mhm,
shirt. But I would love to them to
mhm,
get to that point, and there was like a working group in the organization that I worked in for the station managers to get away from white shirts. But the person said,
mhm,
"Oh, we've already paid this uniform contract for the next X number of years," and I don't know why we still have that. It's so unfunctional. You know what I
yeah,
mean? It's not clothing that's particularly comfortable at all. Most of the time you
mhm,
have to wear suit shoes. So why the hell are you walking
yeah,
around in appliance bays without steel toe caps on? And we go, oh
yeah,
well,
yeah,
it doesn't sit within the role map of that person to operate the gear. Yeah, but they're still walking around the same environments without steel toe caps on. Why do we get rid of
yeah,
all this silly pontification and like verbal masturbation around why we
yeah,
are keeping them in place? And you just say, I want to keep them because they make me feel important. If that's honest,
yeah.
then just say it's honest. And we can work on that over time about why I can tell you you're still really important and so goddamn knowledgeable and so useful without the goddamn white shirt. You're just as
Let your
useful.
actions speak for you. Yeah, let your
Yeah.
actions speak for you. I don't wear a white shirt unless I absolutely have to, and about the only time I do that if it is a public political
Yes, a
setting where
ceremony or
it
something like
has
that. I get
yes.
it. Keep your dress uniform for your ceremony. It's respectful.
Yeah,
It's nice. I
yeah,
get it.
yep. We wear the same shirt as everybody else. It doesn't matter what your rank is. We call everybody by their first name. Because they're people. So my troops they call me by my name, and they know when to address me as chief out of respect. But when we treat people like people, the organization's healthier. You don't walk into doctors don't walk in the doctor's office and address everybody by doctor, right? They address them
Never get
by their
anything done.
names.
Yeah.
Right, a and you think about the transition look at other professions that are around. What did a doctor wear in the 1960s and 70s? They wore a three-piece suit and a white lab coat. Today, you
Mhm.
go to the hospital and a doctor's in scrubs and comfortable. We
Same as
need to
everyone else in the
soften
room.
some of those edges. Yeah, soften some of those edges, but also know when it's appropriate to have those edges, which is our in some of those ceremonial type pieces.
Mm.
That's great. But everyday living in the stations, we should be people
I get the
and
identification on the
value
incident
that.
ground. I always agree with that
Yeah.
bit. So if I need to quickly
Yeah.
have a glance round and try and find who's responsible, either you've got a
Yep.
different color tabard on or your helmet's a
Yep.
different color. That makes
Right.
sense.
No
There's
problem.
quick
Yep.
pattern matching
Absolutely.
identification in an operational environment where things can get hairy pretty quickly. We need to get control over this. Who's in charge? Oh, there she is. There he is. Whatever.
Yep.
But we don't know that it bleeds into the meeting room. It leaks,
Yep.
doesn't it? Organizational
It does.
command and control structures can leak into those sides of
Well,
it,
and
which I think
and
is
you
really
become
dangerous.
arrogant.
Mm,
You become arrogant. all of a sudden you expect them to bow to you like a king or a queen, and that's not what you are. You're a servant. You should be behind them, pushing them forward and guiding them and leading them, not them bowing to you. And when we go into servant leadership, and that I truly believe what we flipped our organizational structure, the traditional triangle that at the top is the leaders. We flipped it upside down. And we said, actually, at the top of our organization is our community, then it's our members, our staff, then it's our, all the way down to the final, which is the fire chief, and said, I'm here as the person holding you guys up and letting you be the face of the organization and the value of the organization,
Did we speak in
because
Australia
that's
about the
important.
pyramid versus the tree?
No,
Oh, I
no.
swear to God, we spoke about this. It might have been
Yeah.
one of your colleagues was with you as well. So
Yep.
traditional pyramid style organizations
Yeah.
is firefighters at the bottom, chief at the
Yep.
top, blah, 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 blah.
Yep.
And same with you, but just for a visual analogy for people. So you flip it on its head. The community and the firefighters are the ones being bashed by the everyday environment, which is the weather
Yeah.
of the
Sure.
organization's service that we deliver. Your job
Mm.
as the chief, you get in the funding, you put all the protections in place, you anchor it in legislation and policy and
Mhm.
protection. And your job is to feed the tree,
Yep.
hold it steady. And then they're out there getting bashed by the everyday of it. But you've got to feed them nutrients, knowledge, information, PPE, updates,
Mhm.
CPD, and you've got to give them that. And if people
Yeah.
do exactly what you've done, it's just a nice memory game for people to try and remember how to flip it upside down. But see your
Mhm.
organization as a tree, because there's fewer
Yeah.
senior leaders and their job is to support everybody else. And it goes the
Right.
same as you get into the branches of I support my watch. There's 12 people on my watch. I've got to feed
Right.
them. I've got to give them nutrients. I've got to hold on to the rest of the organization and make sure we remain part of this culture so we don't just
Yeah.
snap off and lose the run of ourselves and then become vulnerable because we're not aligned to what the rest of the tree is doing. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yep. No, I agree. But we don't look at it that way in the fire service, right? We are a top-down management style system because that's easy. It's hard to be the roots of the tree because it takes foundational strength to
Mm-hmm.
keep that tree alive and going. Where top-down management, it doesn't take strength. It takes fear. It takes control. That's easy compared to creating foundational and giving power away. You have to be able to give the power away. So,
Yeah. Because there's so many mechanisms already in place for fear and power. We have the
yeah,
policies,
yeah,
we have the threats, we have the verbal, the written warnings, we
yeah,
can withdraw people's pay. We have lots of
yeah,
levers to pull. We're still trying to
yeah,
develop, I think, a lot of the support mechanisms and encourage. Hence why we're just prolifically having conversations about it, I would suppose. I want to be respectful of your time. I want to ask you before
yeah,
we go about the year 2 to 8 problem. I've seen you've written on this before. I feel like you've said that the 2 to 8, the years 2 to 8 is the most dangerous and potentially neglected phase in a firefighter's career. I wondered if we could just unfold that a little bit because I think it's a really interesting, um, maybe thought process to walk through.
yeah. And we're still digging into that, but uh, through one part of my experience, we have a survey that identified that year 7 is a turning point for firefighters in their career, and it's influenced by what happens from day 1 through 7. But you think about it, there's a couple internal factors and there's a number of external factors that apply to firefighters in those first 7 years. One, most of the time we're hiring young men and women that are
Mm.
still carving out what their life's going to be. And so their life changes in those first 7 years. We might have hired them when they're 20, 21 years old. And now by year 25, they're now married. Maybe they have kids. And so their priorities change. So we have to recognize that external factors influence them. Also, internally, there's a couple critical factors. They get stagnant. They get complacent in the system. They get overconfident. They might also get bored in the system because we haven't provided them the opportunity of growth and gaining perspective. So for me, I really focus on 2 to 7 because that's when I have them. I have their attention in year 2. I have their attention in year 3, but it diminishes as their years go on. If I don't have the ability to continually engage them so that they feel like they are growing and there's something new on the horizon for them, I can't keep them productive 10 through 20. Does that make
Mm.
sense? So providing them opportunities, as you said, I had somebody with me. I had my operations chief. We rotate our chief officers every 3 years in their position so they don't get stagnant. And so they have to
Nice.
see a different side of our organization. So Paul, who's our operations chief, just came out of training. He spent the last number of years as our training chief, and now he's thrust into operations. His next role is going to be into engineering and overseeing the logistical support of our organization. It's a new challenge every 4th year for him. It's a new opportunity to grow for him. Some he won't like. Some he'll
No.
like, God, I can't wait to get out of this. But then he'll have a different respect for it, for the other people in those positions, and he'll have a different knowledge of our system. So those are one little thing that we do for our folks as they mature in our system. The other part is those young firefighters is getting them out of our system, sending them to international conferences, sending them to different organizations. We do an officer exchange or a firefighter exchange program where we send them to a different location for a week to learn
Nice.
about that system. That creates value in my mind for them. And I think they feel like we care about their well-being because we spent the money to get them out and exposed to something different.
I think that is absolutely massive. I think it stops that plateau. It stops that stagnation. There's so many incredible. I'm really lucky to get invited to loads of stuff, hence where we first met. And it just blows my mind that people, and I get to an extent, it is, we could argue it's a liberty of cost and organizational agility, but there's always a cost. And that cost is often downstream, which is there's a cost to not. It's like, well, if I develop my people and they leave, the worst thing to do is not develop them, then they stay. Do you know what I mean? Because then you'll just end up with an entirely stagnant organization that will eventually fall back into pessimism and apathy. You want to water that innovation muscle, that curiosity, because I think so. For us, we have our recruitment process and our development process for our apprenticeships usually lasts around 2 years. But then I'd love that we find a way to mandate. We don't mandate driving in our organizations, so we're actually having a real challenge with getting enough drivers these days. That needs to happen through the unions and the role map. But then you would have a natural transition where year 3, you're going to do your driving. Year 4, you're going to do your safety command. Year 5, you're going to become a workplace trainer. Year 6, whatever. Do you know what I mean? But you'd at least be able to stretch out, and people continue to see that they are growing, they are developing in some way. We're little dopamine machines. We have to feel that there's a reason to get up tomorrow. And whether that reason's your kids, your job, someone's relying on you, someone cares about you, someone's investing in you. And I think those muscles can really start to hemorrhage and atrophy and die quite quickly in today's, certainly probably more in today's world, because we're seeing so much the comparison of, oh, fucking hell, I've just seen Jason's been on this course and he's just been developed on this, and Pete's gone there, and, Stacey's gone to this, and God, this person's having loads of holidays, that person's just had kids, that person's just got a promotion. We've never had that level of exposure to social media before, where we are seeing this polished version of someone's perfect career, not seeing the backstage, of course. But that can send people even more quickly into the spiral of, what's the point? No one cares about me. Do you know what I mean?
Well,
So I think you've got to
if you
actively help them see it.
Yeah, if you want a high-performing organization, you have to provide opportunities for them to grow. And you can do it in a structured format, like year 2, you do this, year 3, you do this. But I look for people's passion. If you're passionate about medical, you're passionate about tech rescue, you're passionate about fire flow, you're passionate about fire prevention, we want to provide you avenues where you can not be forced into areas, but also grow in areas where you want to go. The other thing is, I think as leaders, sometimes We give the excuse for people not to grow. And as a leader, sometimes we got to grab their hand and hold them through that process and challenge them, even though they might not feel that they're ready for it. We have to challenge them to push through that. I hear that a lot. I'm not ready for that. You might not be, but we're
No
going to
one
work
ever
through it
was.
together, and we're going to grow.
Nobody was.
Yeah. Yeah,
Nobody was ready.
nobody is, right? And if you are ready, you're probably too overconfident. You're probably not hungry. You're probably
You've waited
not
too
humble.
long.
Yep. Yeah.
Go before you're ready.
So yeah, it's like a little kid, right? As a little kid learns to crawl, the first thing as a parent, what you want to do is you want to start to hold them up so they learn to walk. Well, they're not ready to walk yet. They're stumbling around, but you're there to hold them and support them. And that's the goal. And eventually they start walking, and then pretty soon they're running, and you're like, oh God, I wish they were crawling again, because it's easier. It's easier for an organization to hold you in the position you are versus challenge you to grow and succeed.
Yeah.
It's easier
just because
to
you
say
fell
no.
over, that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's easier to say
I
no as a
think,
leader than it is, yeah.
It's is it Simon Sinek, where he's like,
Yeah.
how many times would you give your child the opportunity to learn to walk? And like, what a stupid question. You know, we would
Right.
give them every opportunity consistently because my child is going to walk. You wouldn't go, you know what? He's
Yeah.
fell down 3 times having a crack at this walking thing. Maybe he's just a crawler. Maybe he's just going to be a crawler for his whole life. And you know what? His knees would solidify, his hands would get tougher, and he'd get used to being a crawling human. But you don't.
Yep.
We all go, no, my child is going to learn to walk no matter what, even though it's clearly more dangerous as a bipedal human being than if you went around on all fours. You're not going to fall over very much when you've got 4 points of contact, are you? Why would we want people to go around on 2 legs? Because they know they're going to enjoy life a lot more. Then they can start to climb and they can run. You can never run if you're a crawler. And I know that's a silly analogy for people. It might seem slightly facetious, but it's like, of course, we're going to keep pushing them to walk. Why would we not?
And we need to do that. And we need to
if
do
you
that
fell
in our
over a couple of
organization.
times in your organization, they'd go, you know what, maybe this isn't for you. Or maybe you just need to let me fall over a few times and still go, brother, it's going to be so great when you're a walker. It's going to be so great when you're a driver. It's going to be so great when you can help everybody, or just for your own awareness. Once you get your safe to command and you become, you know, an incident commander, it doesn't mean you're going to have to go through promotion. It just means you're going to become a way better firefighter with an incident command ticket, because you're going to look at the incident totally differently.
Yep. Absolutely. We just have to provide the opportunities and challenge them. That's all.
That's it, brother. I want to be respectful of our time. People won't know it's 4 a.m. where you are. You've been on a big structure fire yesterday, and I want to be respectful of your time. Please go and get a little bit of rest, brother. It was great to see you out in Australia. I'd love to find more excuses to come out and spend time. If people want to reach out and try and get a bit more insight into this, see how smaller, more agile organizations are able to embed these things. I always think you're a great test network for stuff like this, because you're braver, bolder, you can influence change in your organizations, you and your other leaders, with a great deal more success. And I just wanted to try and steal and leak a little bit of that out of your out of your brain shamelessly today. So even as tired as you are, brother, I appreciate you honoring this time. And that's the values thing. You know, you're the type of guy that will do what you say you're going to do. And I don't take that for granted, mate. I really appreciate it. Send my love to the family and everyone. And I look forward to catching up with you again soon.
Sounds great, Pete. We appreciate you, brother.
Well, that's it for today, folks. Hope you took a lot away from that episode. We started the Firefighters podcast to develop, inspire, connect, motivate, represent, and most importantly, celebrate the world of incredible emergency services operators and the wider sector through this series of wide-ranging conversations. We really love creating this podcast and bringing it to so many people. Did you know you can also find these on YouTube? We do a lot of video podcasts now. You can head over to our YouTube page and follow, subscribe there. And as a final ask from us, whatever platform you're on, please rate the podcast. It really helps us as a key performance indicator to reach more and more people. I've been your host, Pete Wakefield. This has been the Firefighters Podcast. And wherever you are in the world, please stay safe, be happy, and where possible, please remember and support your firefighters and first responders. I'll see you next time.